We all have those days sooner or later when the van just won't start. With a Sprinter van, at least the T1N Sprinter, it's not usually the starter, but let's start there. So our starter is down on the driver's side of the engine. And there's the wires on the starter. That big one in the center there in the middle. That's the 12 volts from all the way up here at the battery. And there on that little nut about in the center of the screen, that's the other 12 volts that comes from the key just to signal it on. But that top center big chunk there is this wire right here, coming up from underneath onto this clamp. And this big top bolt here always has 12 volts to the battery. That's the only wire off the battery that is not fused. It's a big wire, and it comes straight off the clamp and comes straight to here. Now, that should always have 12 volts, and this little nut over here on the side gets 12 volts essentially from the key through a relay and a bunch of other things. So if we can test for 12 volts here and verify we get 12 volts here when we turn the key and the starter doesn't do anything, well, then it's down to two things. It's either a bad starter or it's a bad ground. It could be just this connection not making, where it seats into the engine, not making a good connection. That's not very likely. Following that backwards, the next step is the braided ground strap between the engine and the body down by the fuel filter, a little bit forward of this starter motor and down deeper. And then the ground strap up at the battery. We'll talk about that more later, and we'll get into ground connections. When we turn the key on, we should get two clicks down here. First one, key on. This relay should click. That is an in-tank fuel pump coming on North American 2004 and 2006 models. O2s, O3s, and earlier Sprinters, and a lot of UK Sprinters won't have an in-tank pump, and the whole system is sucks fuel from the tank. But most of us have this here in North America. Usually you can feel that relay click. Underneath the van in the fuel tank, we'll find a round dimple like that. That is where the fuel pump sits inside the tank. And when we turn the key on and that relay clicks, you should hear that pump run. And then after about 20 seconds or so, it should shut off just like that. If you don't hear it come on, feel for it. And if you don't feel it, if there's no vibration there, get a hammer or a rock, turn the key off, back on, and then come under here and smack it hard as you can right there. It's pretty tough plastic. You're not going to break it with a rock. Don't go crazy with a hammer. But if you can jar that pump, sometimes it'll start spinning and give you fuel pressure again. In the next position, when we turn it over against the spring pressure to start the van, this one will click. If you don't get those clicks, first thing to try is make sure you're in park. Maybe put it in neutral and try again. If yours still doesn't start and you don't get a click at that relay under the seat, check this relay under the steering wheel. We should get a much softer click, but it's still, you can feel it and barely hear it from the center relay labeled ECM here in the drawing. If we don't get a click here, we can try switching that ECM relay with the blinker on the right or the wiper relay on the left. They're all the same relay. One reason for this no click situation is a specific error in the ECM. Start error displayed on the dash. That's often a problem with the WSP, or also known as the SCREAM, or SKREEM, up inside here, or down here, the ECM, or the chip in the key. Now, if you have this kind of key, it's not likely the chip has fallen out of there, and they just about don't go bad. If you have this kind of key, it's very possible that this came apart and the chip fell out of it. We have a couple videos on cloning keys and alternate key fobs. Another thing that causes problems here is if you've got a wireless phone charger mounted somewhere close And I believe some wireless backup cameras have been a problem. Also, fuse number 7 in the steering column fuse box. The simplest and therefore the first thing we should check when we get start air is disconnect the battery for a minute or two, plug it back in, see if the problem goes away. If that doesn't do it, put it on charger for a little bit, let that battery charge up, make sure it is fully charged above 12.2 volts, and try it again. If either one of those fixes the problem, we can pretty much stop looking for what's causing it. It's going to be the ECM, unfortunately. So reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with SOS Diagnostics and we'll get that fixed for you. I can offer a loaner ECM so you can keep driving the van while you send your equipment off to SOS Diagnostics or any repair center of your choice, but SOS is the one I recommend, obviously. If that fan comes on with the key, it's probably going to be an ECM problem, but check fuses 17 and 18 down here first. If both of those are toast, that fan will come on. Apparently that fan will also come on just because this is disconnected, which is the air conditioner dryer. Now, if your issue isn't here at the AC dryer and the fuses are good, and you're still getting that fan on, it's probably going to be an ECM problem, and we've got a video that dives into that. This other video isolates whether the problem is really in the ECM or in one of the 3 power legs that goes to the ECM. If it turns out to be one of the 3 legs isn't getting power, the video will show you how to patch around that and get yourself home so that you can troubleshoot the van further when you get there. Naturally, one of the most common problems is just a low battery, and if the motor doesn't spin fast enough, it's not going to start. With a good charge on a good battery, it should spin like this. One reason for a crank no start, such as this, would be fuse number 17 down here. A failing camshaft sensor will make it spin like that, but not fire because it's not delivering any fuel. We have a separate video on camshaft replacement and a couple videos on the AP200 by Autel. It's a code reader that's compatible with our vans. In the live data there, we can look at things like the camshaft and crankshaft synchronization, the transmission starter lockout, and things like that. And there are several fuses that could cause a crank no start or no crank situation. So check all your fuses. There's a video here to help with that. These dash lights are important. They should stay on, come on like that, and then stay on like this while you're starting it. If the lights go out, this could be a dead battery, but it's more than likely a bad wire, bad connection at the battery or the firewall right next to it. Maybe the bare wire down by the fuel filter. Now, if it gets any fuel, it's going to sound more like this. If it's really cold outside and your fuel gel's over, it'll sound kind of like this. At this stage, we've checked all the electrical check boxes. The starter lockout from the transmission, the crank and cam sensor are synchronizing. We've got enough fuel pressure to fire the injectors. All of the criteria has been met, but our air-fuel mix isn't quite right, and that might have to do with the mass airflow sensor. We have a different video on MAF testing and troubleshooting. One trick that doesn't hurt to try, especially if the van tries to start, sputters and dies. Unplug the MAF here, squeeze on the sides and pull. With that MAF unplugged, the van will run on default mass airflow values, and a dead MAF can prevent the van from starting. The OM612 has a very different mass airflow sensor, and our video for testing the mass airflow sensor does not work on this style. This is just one of the differences between the 2 engines. OM612s, and I think their cousin, the OM611 across the sea, has added luxury of these clear fuel lines and this negative pressure fuel pump on the front of the engine. In these fuel lines, if you see any bubbles, that's going to be a reason for a no start. Got to get all the air out of those lines. Rather than a 12-volt pump inside the tank, inside the diesel tank, pushing fuel forward, this van works on sucking fuel from the tank through the filter all the way up here and then pushing it on to the high pressure fuel pump down below. So there's a little extra problem to look out for on this one. Not a great big deal, but can be a nuisance to troubleshoot. I personally have not tried it, but I'm told you can put a shop vac and blow air. I emphasize a clean shop vac, not this old rusty dusty piece of junk I've got, but a nice new clean shop vac shoved into there, providing a positive pressure in the tank while we crank it will prime the filter and the fuel system. I suspect an electric leaf blower would be as good, but again, I'm going to emphasize make it a clean one, not this old rusty thing that I dug out of somebody's trash. And of course the EGR is different and the intake manifold is different. Complicated getting to the glow plugs down there on this engine, more so than the other. Glow plugs would certainly have something to do with starting in cold weather. Being in Florida, I don't have too much experience and knowledge to share on glow plugs. I can tell you how to get them out though. Pre-soak them for 5 days before you even try, and then use a tapping force, not just brute force, to get them out. A couple causes for crank no start or long cranks will be no correlation between the intake air and the boost pressure sensors over here, and don't have any connection. Perhaps one of those hoses got left off when somebody was working on the alternator. Van might not start. If this little wire right here with a 90-degree connector on it going to the fuel quantity control valve, if that has been mixed up with this wire over here to the crankcase breather heater, often the van won't start, or maybe it'll start and run horribly because its quantity control valve isn't getting commanded properly. Rail pressure problems are most frequently in the injectors, and we have a test for that. Fuel rail pressure valve back here is a common fault. It's easier to replace the whole rail. Quantity control valve is down here. Beyond the various valves and sensors that I just barely touched on, like the cam and the crankshaft sensor have to work together. I'm not sure I even mentioned that. There are other little reasons that I'm sure I completely forgot about, so please comment below and remind me so I can put them in the next version of this video. In the meantime, please join me on Patreon. Membership donations, it makes it possible for more of these videos to come and my learning to continue so that I can keep sharing it with you. So patreon.com, look for Florida Van Man. And while you're exploring the internet, find me on Facebook. We've got a Facebook group dedicated to these vans. Not specifically sprinters, but mostly sprinters, and a lot about well, solar power for them, generators, diesel heaters, destinations. Let's talk more about where we're going and why we enjoy our vans. See you on Facebook.